Hey everybody, Dr. Glenn here, and welcome to our Facebook Live, Dr. Glenn Live, and I'll answer some questions for you if you have them. You can send them to drglennlive@gmail.com. That's drglennlive@gmail.com. And if I don't get them during the Facebook Live, then I will send you an email answer. We'll get to that in just a few minutes. Today, I want to start a series on talking about neurotransmitters. So a lot of people say, well, what is a neurotransmitter? Well, a neurotransmitter is a chemical that allows nerve cells to talk to each other. And they think of them like carriers of messages. You carry the message from one town to the next town. So neurotransmitters allow the neurons to talk to each other. You've got several different kinds of neurotransmitters, and we'll get into that in just a minute. Some of the big ones that most people have heard of are serotonin, dopamine, acetylcholine, epinephrine, norepinephrine, and some things like this. We're gonna divide them into two categories. There are things called excitatory neurotransmitters, and those are basically epinephrine and norepinephrine, and those help you with fight or flight. So they help your neurons talk to each other when you either need to run away from something bad or stand up and defend the village against the marauding Vikings. That's what your norepinephrine and epinephrine do. The next one is dopamine, and that's often called the pleasure and reward neurotransmitter, but I like to think about it more sort of as motivation. It's the neurotransmitter that helps you to get things done, get things accomplished and finished. So if you're the kind of person that has a lot of projects that you get started, but you have trouble finishing your products, you might have a dopamine deficit. The next one that I want to talk about is something called acetylcholine. And acetylcholine has to do with learning and memory or problem solving. So if you always have a problem with math and solving problems and things like that, then you might have an acetylcholine deficit. The big one, the really, really big one that lots of people have heard of and that people talk about is the one called serotonin. And serotonin is often called the happy neurotransmitter or the happy chemical, but I like to think about it more in terms of joy for life, a positive outlook. It's not necessarily that you're happy and laughing and giddy all the time, but it's more like you have a positive outlook on life. And when a person has serotonin, especially if you have serotonin combined with dopamine deficit and dopamine and serotonin issues, then that's when you tend to be depressed. And we're going to get into each one of these over the next few weeks. We'll spend a week on each one. But serotonin and dopamine are the biggies for depression. And I'm going to come back to that in just a minute because depression is something that's very, very important to me. The other neurotransmitter that I want to talk about is it's the only neurotransmitter that is what we call inhibitory. In other words, it stops something from communicating, and that one's the one that's called Gaba. And Gaba is short for gamma alpha butyric acid, and you don't have to remember that, or you don't even have to try to spell it, just call it Gaba. What Gaba does is it helps to keep your nervous system calmed down. And when you don't make enough Gaba, that is what leads to anxiety problems and anxiety issues. And there are several different things that can keep you from making enough Gaba, and we'll talk about that on the day that we talk about Gaba. But what I would like to go into right now is one of the common denominators for almost all of your neurotransmitters. When I was in school, and that was quite a while ago, you can tell by looking at my hairline, it's been a while. When I was in school, we were taught that neurotransmitters are made in your brain. And unfortunately, there's a lot of doctors that are still practicing and taking care of their patients based on the idea that neurotransmitters are made in the brain. But what we have discovered over the last few years, and this has been published numerous times over the last few years, especially a landmark publication last February, is that the majority of your neurotransmitters are actually made in your gut. And we didn't have any idea about that when I was in school. We thought neurotransmitters were made in the brain. As a matter of fact, we didn't know anything was made in the gut. When I was in school, we were taught that the gut just had enzymes. It broke down your food, you absorbed your stuff, and nothing else happened. Well, what we know now is that there is a massive and vibrant colony of bacteria called your microbiome that live in your gut. And not only do they help you digest food and things like that, but they actually make lots and lots of important things for you. So most people have heard about prebiotics. And prebiotics are things like fermented foods and things like that that help you, help your bacteria do things that they're supposed to be doing. And then there are probiotics, and a lot of people take probiotics. But in a good, healthy gut, you can have thousands and thousands of different species of bacteria, and they all have their own little niche to perform. And the interesting thing is that no two people have exactly the same bacterial personality or bacterial ratios and things in their gut. Only about 25% of the bacteria that live in your gut, good bacteria. Remember, now we all grew up being taught that bacteria is bad stuff and we should kill it and get rid of it. Well, actually, probably 99% of the bacteria in the world is good for you and does good stuff. But there's a whole new category of things that are now being called postbiotics. And postbiotics are the things that bacteria make for you, just, for example, just like your neurotransmitters. So I want to talk about serotonin for just a moment, because that's really the biggie. And I'll tell you why serotonin is so important to me. It's because in the last few years, 2 of my close friends have lost sons to suicide because of neurotransmitter issues. So that's a really, really big deal for me. Just a few things. One of the things that we've noticed, I've just got a couple of notes here that I'm going to refer to, is that if you look at the incidence of depression, at the increasing rate of depression, what you'll see is that depression has gone up ever since the mid to early 1990s. And in the 1990s is when we started spraying pesticides on our food. And what these pesticides do is they destroy the bacteria in our gut. And so what happens is you destroy the bacteria in the gut, you can't make the neurotransmitters, and so you end up with the symptoms of neurotransmitter problems. In this example, we're talking about serotonin, so that would be depression would be the symptom of that. This is a great statistic right here. Antidepressive drug use has gone up 65% in the last 15 years. And this even surprised me. I knew that 1 in 4 women in North America in their 40s are taking antidepressive drugs. But what I read this morning in an article in the New York Times, as a matter of fact, I posted it on my website, on my Facebook page this morning, is that today 1 in 6 Americans is taking an antidepressive drug. That's big. Think of the magnitude and the impact of that just for a minute. 1 in 6 Americans is taking an antidepressive drug. That is a serious, serious problem. When you combine these things with the escalating rate of obesity and diabetes, Alzheimer's and dementia, we're looking at a chronic disease problem that is just going to be absolutely overwhelming. Now, you can solve these problems, and the way you do it is by repairing and healing your gut bacteria and taking care of those types of things. And there's a lot of things that you can do for that, and there's some information about that on my website if you'd like to learn more, drgarlandglenn.com. You're welcome to give the office a call if you'd like to and talk to Lanine. She's our health coach. You can reach her on 703-303-8844. She would love to do an online consult with you, or an on-the-phone consult with you, and talk to you about some of these things. But what I'm going to do over the next several weeks is take and go spend a week doing each one of these neurotransmitters: the epinephrine, norepinephrine, the dopamine, the serotonin, the acetylcholine, and the Gaba. So I'm going to do a little bit on each one of those. We'll do these on Tuesdays at 12:30, and the replays will be put up on the Facebook page. So if you can't make it, that's fine. And what I'm going to do is each week I'm going to tell you just some things that you can do on your own, by yourself, just as a part of your daily life, that you can do to help improve neurotransmitter activity. So I've got one question that somebody has sent in that I want to answer, because it actually really relates very closely to what we're talking about. And that is, I had a person write in and ask, what is the best thing that you can do to heal adrenal fatigue? And they were specifically asking about what foods they could eat. Now, what's very interesting here is that your epinephrine and norepinephrine, they're made by the adrenal glands. Now, serotonin and dopamine and acetylcholine, they're made in the gut. But epinephrine and norepinephrine are actually made by the adrenal glands. And what we've found over the last several years is that the number one driver of adrenal fatigue is gut inflammation. All right, so that would lead us into what we're going to eat to help improve our guts. And these are just some general guidelines. But if you want to think about what are the simple things that you can do to improve your gut health and bring your inflammation down, the biggest thing you could do would be to bring down the amount of carbohydrates that you eat. Think about carbohydrates like this. Carbohydrate is a long word for sugar. And starting in 1977, we've been told to eat large amounts of grain. And grain is the primary carbohydrate that in North America, that's what we eat. That all started in 77 when George McGovern chaired a Senate subcommittee on diet and nutrition and rewrote the food pyramid. Some of y'all that are, you're as old as I am, you can kind of remember this. When I grew up, my parents and grandparents ate bacon and eggs for breakfast. And then we were told bacon and eggs are bad for you. So we're supposed to start eating cereal and things like that. Well, cereals are made from grains. Of course, we just come out of the counterculture and everybody's running around kissing trees and hugging the earth, or hugging trees and kissing the earth. Maybe that's not, that works a little better. And so eating grains sound good to us, and it was supposed to help us with heart disease. Well, heart disease keeps going up and everything else keeps going up. And the biggest thing we've done is increase the amount of sugar that we eat. So the biggest thing that you can do, it's simple. I'm not going to say it's easy, but it is simple, is cut down on the amount of carbohydrates that you eat. Cutting the carbohydrates down will lower the inflammation in the body and especially in the gut. And when you lower the inflammation in the gut, then you take some of the load off of the adrenal glands and off the stress of the adrenal glands, and then you actually give them a chance to heal. There are lots of supplements and things out there for adrenal support, but if you don't make the lifestyle changes and lower the gut irritation and inflammation, then you're just wasting your time on the adrenal support. But if you put the two together, it can be very, very effective. So thank you for being here today. Hope you got a little bit out of this. Each week, over the next few weeks, we're going to be doing a different neurotransmitter. We'll talk about things that you can do to help improve those functions. So I hope you have a good day today. Have a great 4th of July tomorrow, and I'll see you next week. Thanks. Bye.